Feel like I'm getting deja vu. This is like a rock war number 2. A rock war number 2. I like the look of those oil supplies. I'd be ashamed if someone invaded you. If someone invaded you. And I ran so far away. Bomb I bomb them night and day, but destroy USA. A drone appears above your head. A mower bomb comes falling down on you. Falling down on you. The fleet is moving nearer still. The Strait of Hormuz, it comes in view. The oil must flow through. And I ran so far away. The bomb I bombed them night and day, but destroy USA. A tiny hit hits a big red button. Atomic bombs come falling down on you. Mushroom clouds in view. Send out a tweet to let you know. World War III, 'cause Israel told me to. All for Netanyahu. And I read so far away. Oh, bomb I read. Oh, bomb them night and day. Oh, and I read so far away. Oh, bomb I read. Oh, bomb them night and day. But destroy USA.
Ladies and gentlemen, now it's Too Late with Alan Mosley.
Wow. It's quite a performance, I gotta say. That right there is why memory costs $1,000 now.
Yep.
Is it worth it? You know?
It might be.
Guys, welcome back for another episode of It's Too Late. I am your host, Alan Mosley, joined as always by the #1 producer in late night. It's Dave Willimowski. Dave! Dave, how are you doing?
Doing good. Doing good. Yeah, working steady. You know, having fun. Tore my dryer apart. I always enjoy doing that every once in a while.
Yeah?
So,
Yeah.
It's doing good. I'm doing good.
Yeah. You guys don't know this because you're not like a super secret like VIP subscriber who gets to see our rehearsals before we start the show. But Dave was clear like 20 minutes ago. He was translucent. Yeah, it was kind of weird.
Forgot what I was allowed to wear.
Yeah. You know what? I'm picking on you, but I've done that before. I have a shirt. It's not green like backdrop green, which right now I'm not even using. Like I could be wearing it right now. I'm not even using a green screen, but I was using a green screen on this one particular occasion because we had some stupid bit planned. And in the same week, I wore a like teal aqua colored shirt.
Yeah.
And the reason I did is because it's actually a tighter fitting shirt, and I was all like proud of myself because I had lost a little weight, and so I was like, "Look at me, cute. I'm putting on." Yeah, exactly. I felt cute, and then I sat down at the desk like 5 minutes before you and I got together, and I was like, misty, like it was like I was a fog. It was an ethereal.
Shimmery.
Yeah. And I was like, God dang it. And so now here I am running to go change clothes. It's probably the only time that you were probably here and I wasn't here yet.
Yeah.
That may have been the only time. But, tough thing about last week's show, you guys, is it was a really big week. There was a lot of Epstein news, and I had this really amazing article getting ready to come out, but it didn't come out until this week. But we didn't really get around to that, not only because the article hadn't been published yet, but also because we had a guest interview that already ran over an hour when this show is an hour long. And I was like, well, crap. And so I was like, well, okay, next week then we're gonna dig into it. Me and Dave, we're gonna have all the factoids laid out. We're gonna have some tweets and some quotes. We're gonna talk about the whole article, except for then this week's guest interview, which is not as long as last week, is still so long that I think if you account for our 3-minute countdown and the music video we started with and our introduction, we're already over time. Right now. Yeah, we're already out of time. Which means I did want to share at least one thing with you guys, because last week we talked a lot about Kash Patel. And we made the point, and I wrote this in my article, and maybe we'll talk about the article on Friday. I don't know. I'm scared to promise things, and then I get all up in my feelings, and I decide, I don't want to do this. But I wrote in my article that Kash Patel perjured himself before Congress. He should be in jail right now. He should actually just be deported. I think that's the answer. But it wasn't just him. It was also Attorney General Pam Bondi. She also made statements saying, all right, I have all the files. And then she went in front of Congress. And then she said, okay, well, there's no more files. And then, of course, that turned out to be a lie, because actually it turns out there was millions and millions of files that hadn't been released yet. But you would think that these people, now that all these Epstein files are being released to the public, and people, heroes like Thomas Massey, are fighting to get these names unredacted, to get this stuff out there, you would think that people that were on the wrong side of this thing would be rushing for the opportunity to get right with it, to get out ahead of it, to say, oops, I misspoke. That's their word, right? Oop, I misspoke on that one, but here, let me lay out all the truth for you, so that way I'm not arrested for perjury. Well, Pam Bondi actually had that opportunity earlier today. She actually spoke in front of a congressional committee where they asked her questions about the Epstein files. And so this is Pam Bondi's version of a mea culpa, my bad, let me finally tell the truth.
The Dow right now is over. The Dow is over $50,000. I don't know why you're laughing. You're a great stock trader, as I hear, Raskin. The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Mr. Jordan, Mr. Jordan.
Committee.
I'm sorry, what? This is
upsetting.
I didn't edit this tape. She was literally asked, why are you guys covering for pedophiles? And her answer was, have you seen the stock market? In a weird way, I think that's probably actually her answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
To be totally honest with you, I think that actually, it's like it's a read between the lines type of a situation. Yeah. So anyway, she should go to jail. So
at least
when I'm elected emperor and I get my highway that's above you guys' highway and my own fiber internet that's better than y'all's internet, and it's just 1 cent. It's 1 cent for everybody. One penny for everyone. That's the tax. Bondi will be in jail. So vote for me.
Wow, that's nice of you. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I do my best. Guys, we're going to be back with our friend Hunter DeRensis to talk about Defend the Guard and more right after this commercial break. Welcome back, everybody. Our guest this evening is, of course, the editor at the Libertarian Institute, as well as communications director for the veterans advocacy organization Bring Our Troops Home. Our audience will know that their primary policy that they love to support is Defend the Guard. His writing has been featured at numerous sites all over the internet. Of course, it is our old friend, Hunter DeRensis. Hunter, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Alan. Really happy to be back. I thought it was a little strange at first when you said it was a necessity that I be the guest for the week of Valentine's Day, but here I am.
Well, of course, the audience craves more Hunter, even though I believe you've trimmed the stash just a little bit since last time. I don't know. Maybe it's just the angle. I'm not sure. But with that said, Hunter, the last time we were together, we had only begun to scratch the surface of such exciting topics as our favorite movies, war movies, anti-war movies, classic cinema, the state of Western media. But our time got cut short, and then we had scheduled a episode to pick that conversation back up, and then I had to reschedule. It's totally my fault. And then, long story short, it's been almost a year. So I did actually look it up before we got on. I think it was around March of 2025 that we did that show, and now it's February of 2026, so not quite a year. But before we get into all of that, since it is a new year, it's 2026, that means also it's a new legislative season. So we, of course, have to get an update on Defend the Guard. So remind the audience, for perhaps new viewers, what is Defend the Guard and how are the prospects looking for 2026?
So Defend the Guard is a state-based bill which would prohibit their National Guard units from being deployed into overseas combat operations that have not been legally declared by Congress as required by Article 1, Section 8 of the U.S. Constitution. So this is a way basically for the states to rein in the federal government and ensure that the federal government is staying within federal law and using the age-old American principle of federalism to do it. Things are going fantastic, honestly. I've been with this organization, I guess, going on 5 years now, and it's been really breathtaking to see the progress we've made with this bill, which truly is the most important anti-war legislation in decades. Back at the beginning, when we were just starting out, and it was a bit of a difficulty getting this bill, which would have such enormous ramifications for this wayward U.S. foreign policy, getting it introduced in just a handful of states, waiting and hoping that it would be brought up for a vote in committee, and having to fight for that. But now, fast forward 5 years, going into 2026, this legislation has been introduced in over 30 state legislatures, and
Wow.
it's been passed in numerous committees and even passed on the floor of numerous legislative chambers, including the Idaho Senate, the Arizona Senate 3 times in a row, I might add, the Virginia House of Delegates, unanimously, I might add, and the New Hampshire House of Representatives. And the latter, in New Hampshire, they passed it once again just last month. We're getting our committee hearing in Arizona to get the ball rolling there just next week. And Idaho could drop at any minute, and we're very excited about the prospects in that state specifically, not to mention others like Kentucky, Tennessee. We are all over the map with this bill, pushing it, using both grassroots activists, using veterans who are tired of fighting these endless wars and do not want the next generation of people in uniform to suffer as they did. And we're really getting this movement started. As some people might know, it's supported by Thomas Massey, Rand Paul, Ron Paul, Tulsi Gabbard, a lot of great people who have looked at this bill and said, yeah, this is the way we do it. This is the way we bring our troops home. And I'm incredibly proud to work for that organization, and I'm incredibly proud of the work we're able to do, which I really think is, to quote one of my other bosses, Scott Horton, it is the most important movement in America, having these right-of-center veterans turn against the global war on terror and fight to end the war machine in D.C. It's really remarkable work, and I feel very pressed to add that if people want to support this work, Go to bringourtroopshome.us, go to defendtheguard.us, begin making a monthly contribution, chip in $20, do your part, because this work matters, and we can't do it without the resources and the support of the wider liberty movement. There's no better cause that you could be working for, because this bill will save lives.
Well, I'm always reminded when we have this conversation, something that Ron Paul used to always say. In fact, he said it on this very show a number of years ago. Is that when it comes to presidential politics during campaign season, the peace candidate always wins. Now, that doesn't mean they keep their word, obviously, and are truly a peace candidate once they're in office. But it goes to show that the public really wants a peace candidate in the Oval Office. But something that we don't talk about a lot on this program and a lot of programs, because people are so we live in such a national dominated nation, and you know, your politics on TV 24/7 is always talking about politics at the federal level, is that we sort of forget to talk about things at the state level. I know I'm positive that the average voter walking up and down the street does not keep up as well as they should with the politics going on in their own state house. They don't even know who their own representative is and what way they're voting. They maybe they're lucky if they know what party they belong to, and that's about it. But this is such a unique opportunity, and I feel like one thing, and you can you can comment on this, because I know it's something that you follow very closely. I think a lot of people don't understand, particularly when it comes to bills like this one, and particularly when it comes to politics at the state level, that it's not just you and I write a bill, it's perfect, we submit it this year, it gets voted up or down, and then that's the end of it. These things are processes that take years and years and years of coalition building. It doesn't happen overnight. And by the way, just because it doesn't happen overnight, that doesn't mean it's a failure. You know that when you're going into that fight, you're going into that fight for potentially term after term after term. But as you already pointed out, you guys have already seen the growth and the momentum over those number of years. And imagine what we would be missing if you guys had submitted it once or twice and said, oh, well, it didn't work, time to pack up the wagons, right? So talk a little bit about that, about how it's a process that can take years, and volunteers have to be willing to make the calls and donate the money and push it for several congressional terms.
That's completely true. And it's a shame when people get into their heads that, we can defeat the U.S. empire, the Washington empire, in, just a couple of weeks if we try. The fact is, it is difficult to get any legislation passed. There are instances, numerous examples of bills as broadly popular among Republicans like concealed carry, where even in deep red states, it took a decade of log rolling to get a bill like that passed when it should have been a shoo-in. So the fact that we're seeing such magnificent growth over such a short period of time as 5 or 6 years is remarkable. And even Michael Bolden at the 10th Amendment Center has said how amazing our work has been, for the fact that the 10th Amendment Center wrote a previous version of this bill close to, now approaching 15 years ago, but it was part of their litany of bills that they favor and have made drafts of to rein in different aspects of the federal government that are overreaching when it comes to their constitutional powers. And Michael Bolden has commented that Defend the Guard has by far been the most successful piece of legislation that the 10th Amendment Center has favored, even though in many ways it is the most radical, because it is opposing the most entrenched interest in D.C., which is the war party and the military-industrial complex. And it's become the most successful despite those political drawbacks, because of the work of Bring Our Troops Home, our activists, and our supporters getting this legislation through. And you're right, when Ron Paul said that peace is popular, Defend the Guard was included as a ballot initiative on the Texas Republican primary ballot in 2024. So to be clear to people, that is not like a referendum. It is not legally binding. It really is just putting a ballot initiative in front of voters where it's like the world's biggest straw poll, where they can say, I favor this or I do not favor this. And in front of Texas Republicans, they were asked, do you support keeping your National Guard out of any wars Congress has not declared? And out of Texas Republicans, over 84% said yes. Over 1.8 million Republican voters said yes. You will not find a larger sample or a bigger demonstration of a straw poll anywhere in the world than that. It outpolled Donald Trump on the Texas Republican ballot. That is how popular this issue is among conservatives, and I'll throw in other evidence for independents, even, our friends on the progressive left. Like, this issue is popular. Americans do not want to be fighting these endless wars. And when you have support like that, it does make our job a little bit easier. But what still makes it easier is getting, the concrete support from supporters and people of liberty. You mentioned Ron Paul and advice that he had given on this show. I'll mention another Ron Paul quote. Once you become knowledgeable, you have an obligation to do something about it. I believe in that. I live that every day. I know you do too. And I think it's important your listeners do too. And they can do something by chipping in, giving $20 a month, and committing themselves to this movement, which is doing so much to awaken people to the problems of our foreign policy and try to return to the humble republic of our founding fathers.
Well, just to put the period on that statement, once again, remind everybody, bringourtroopshome.us, defendtheguard.us. You can sign up there, sign the petition, get updates. You can also sign up to get on the phone, I understand. Make sure your voice is heard. Call your congressman, that sort of thing. The thing is that, or at least the hope is that, as soon as this passes in a handful of states, it's a domino effect, right? You break through that kind of invisible barrier of this is real. And I really want to stress, because I know that there's people who watch this show that, they see just the madness going on in the world and they feel totally not represented, in this country. And and because of that, they feel like, well, politics is just a loser's game. Nothing can be done for it. But this is an issue, and this is a bill that has momentum, that actually has traction. This is real, actionable work that you can do with just a little bit of your time and resources and actually affect positive change. So I really, really want to emphasize that to people, that this is not pie in the sky policy. We're not hoping for Ancapistan. We're not talking about any of that here. We're talking about real legislation that's being voted on at the state level that has legs. We're talking about real stuff here. So please, please, please.
That will have a real impact.
Yes.
We're not begging. Believe me, I can't tell you the number of times we've pushed this bill forward and we've had legislators come forward and say, hey, if we make this a resolution, I bet we could get it passed. We're not here for resolutions. We're not here to just have little, nice notes with a smiley face on it. This is a real bill, which, if passed, will have actionable results to change U.S. foreign policy. That's why the Pentagon put so many reasons into fighting us. That's why when we go to committee hearings, we have generals show up with 3-4 stars on their lapel to say, please don't pass this bill. This will overturn our gravy train. We can do some real stuff here if people put in the resources and help us.
Well, the reason why you're the communications director and I'm not is because I would be the one asking those generals, how many wars have you actually won in your life? But we're not going to go.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but there's a great instance where you do have generals, because they're not used to having to defend their record, to defend these policies in public, and it's really great kind of, putting the squeeze on them. One of my favorites, we had a general, I believe it was a brigadier general, in Maine. The adjutant general of the state came into a committee hearing, and he's having to answer questions about this legislation, about U.S. foreign policy. And at one point he goes, what even is a war? Like, like just messing with the definition. And that's a pretty incredible thing for him to say, for any of these people to say. And it nails them to the wall.
That is a statement from someone who's so far removed from the front line that the cost of war, and I don't mean just the dollars and cents, is so far removed from their psyche that they have no skin in the game. So I don't care about their opinion. So with that said, I want to move on to, of course, the topic for this evening. Our audience may not know this about you, but Hunter is actually quite the cinephile. The cinephile, not the people in the Epstein files. It's a different type of file. Hunter knows more about cinema, in particular classic cinema. He's forgotten more about it than I think most of us know. But I consider myself to be somewhat of a cinephile myself, nowhere near the level that you are. We were actually just discussing the other night in our community Discord, talking about just trying to find new content. I don't know if you're like this, Hunter. The way I am is I kind of get into a mood where I want to binge watch some stuff, and then I'll get busy and I don't have time, and then time will open up and I want to plow through my list some more. And I have struggled in recent months, or really even recent years, with finding new things to watch, because all the new stuff coming out is garbage. It's just so bad. And there's so many TV shows that I've been burnt on, where you get invested in a show and it just takes a nosedive, or they change cast and crew and they go in a different direction. Of course, and I don't want to get into all of the famous instances of a show starting with one direction and then the creative directors deciding that they know better than the original authors of the source material, and then they decide to remake it in their image. A host of reasons why I've kind of run into a wall. But I know with you on the show, you would probably recommend that, well, there's probably some new stuff coming up that you might be interested in, and I certainly want you to share your opinions on that. But you would say, of course, what is old is new again. What do you mean you're looking for new things to watch? We have decades and decades and decades of classic cinema, and I'm sure you haven't seen it all. So to try at least to attempt to pick up where we left off, I had asked you for something of like a top 10 list of your favorite films. And I believe we had gotten like 4 or 5 out, but I want to revisit that. So I'm going to put you on the spot right off the bat, and then we're going to have a little bit of batting this around. So I'm going to challenge you without thinking too much about it. But knowing you've got it written down somewhere. But without thinking too much about it, what are your top films of all time? Any era, any genre, anything. Your absolute favorites.
So you're right. This was not even prep for this interview or anything else. I just have a litany of lists that I constantly keep. I'm a big list guy. I like ordered things. When people go, oh, well, these are my favorites, no certain order. No, I have an order. I've thought about this a lot, and it's very specific. Okay. So you're right. In a previous episode, we did 1 through 5. If you'd like 6 through 10, I am ready to go, because my favorite director of all time is Alfred Hitchcock. Huge fan. The man made about 52 movies over the course of his long career. I've seen 39 of them, so I have a pretty good idea of his filmography. My absolute favorite is Rebecca from 1940. This is the first film he made when he came to Hollywood. This is the first film he did in the studio system coming out of Britain, and it is his only film to win Best Picture. It is an adaptation of a Rebecca De Mornay story, which he adapted several times from her. She also wrote the short story The Birds, which he later adapted to acclaim. And this is just a phenomenal movie. It actually is a decent February watch for you romance fans, because it is, in short, about a woman played by Joan Fontaine, who the year after this would win an Academy Award for another Hitchcock film, Suspicion, where she basically falls in love with Laurence Olivier, who is a British lord, British aristocrat, and she's just a regular girl, and they fall in love over a short period of time and they marry. However, the memory and sort of the ethereal presence of his dead first wife, Rebecca, hangs over their marriage, hangs over the movie, and it's spectacular. It is one of my favorite twists of all time. It is so. Joan Fontaine in this has one of the best performances I've ever seen in a film. Alan, you will never see a woman who looks like she cares less about how people treat her. Just think absolutely no self-esteem. And she sells that. It's incredible. There's some, low-key lesbian aspects that are very subtle because Hitchcock loved his gay villains. This is just excellent movie. Cannot recommend enough.
So I something that just sprang to mind that's a little bit of a sideways topic from this is I love that you had the physical copy there on your desk to show people, but in that and I can't help but make this comment that what is your opinion on kind of the state of physical media in the sense that everything has been pushed so strongly towards streaming and the era of, I mean, we're not talking, forget I'm old enough where, we had tapes, VHS tapes, but and then obviously there's DVD, then there's Blu-ray, but it's actually getting to the point where sometimes it can be difficult to find even newer releases on DVD or Blu-ray because they're just getting rid of physical media completely. I know there's people out there that would make the argument that if you don't have it, you don't own it. If you only own the digital rights, that doesn't really mean you own anything, because what happens if the streaming service goes away? What happens if that link goes away? And not to mention, by the way, for people, the really hardcore types who actually demand perfection in their viewing experience, I hate to tell you this, but it doesn't matter how fast your internet is. Sometimes you stream things and it just doesn't look the same. It just doesn't look the same. So what's your take on that, on kind of the whole just physical media in general?
I think it's very difficult to find flaws in the arguments presented by physical media collectors when we know for a fact that streaming services sometimes do edit content where they either remove violence or language or things that are considered politically correct decades later, where we know that even if you go on Amazon and you quote unquote purchase a film, that if film rights change or they lose a deal with a certain studio, that item can still be removed and it doesn't matter what price you paid for it. And you're right that it can become it was believed when, the internet starting out and, you first get streaming, everything's going to be available at the touch of a finger. Whereas in reality, we see now, decades later, so much content is lost in the wormhole of the internet, where it never existed in something that you could physically hold in your hand. It gets removed, and then when it's removed, it's quickly forgotten about. Even the example I just gave, Rebecca. This is a major Hitchcock film, winner of Best Picture at the Academy Awards. This is not available for streaming anywhere. You can get a very low-quality version on YouTube for free, or you can buy a high-quality Blu-ray from the Criterion Collection, which is what I personally collect, for no better reason than I really like the covers. These are really nice. I like them. I like the descriptions. On the back, you get special features. Remember special features, Alan? When you would get a movie and you could see background stuff or interviews or just cool things about it? Those are nice. Right in front of my setup, I have a little wall of Criterions. Nothing crazy. It's like 45 movies. I know there are people out there with entire walls of a complete library. They own every single movie they've ever seen. I'm not like that. If it's a movie I love, but it's not a Criterion edition, but it's released by another reputable distributor, honestly, I'm not buying it. If it doesn't have the C, it's not for me. So that's just me personally. But I do think that it's hard to find any fault with physical media collectors and saying that as long as you have it, you own it. It exists. A studio cannot change it or retroactively reverse themselves. People throwing on old DVD releases of The Simpsons because they want to watch the episode with Michael Jackson, which you're not going to find anywhere. That's not on Disney Plus, which edits the other episodes anyway.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
even though I don't go to the hilt with it, I think it's pretty flawless to say that you should have some physical media of just your favorites or things that you never want to forget.
Yeah, I agree completely. Sad to say, I don't own a ton, but there's a handful of things that kind of in my mind of like, this is one of my favorite pieces of art of all time. So I made the point of picking it up just so that if the worst were to come and something has been edited or streaming is just simply unavailable, then I have it somewhere. If anything, I'm actually in a place where when I built my most recent computer, I didn't even build it with a disk drive, because who has discs, who has Blu-rays, who has DVDs, and so I'm gonna have to actually get a new Blu-ray player on a totally random side note. But with that said, okay. So let's finish out the top 10 list because there's a couple of other topics I want to discuss. So real quick, what are the rest of Hunter's top 5 or top 10 favorite films of all time?
Yes, and I will try to speed through these. During the last episode, you complimented me for having such a diverse range of genres in my list. I hope to continue with that. My favorite horror movie of all time, Rosemary's Baby. I think it's okay to watch because Polanski directed this before everything happened. This is it's the greatest horror movie of all time, in my opinion. I mean, God knows I love The Exorcist. I love The Shining. I love so many of these, which are, some of the greatest films of all time. But this movie is so perfect. I can sit down and just cherish every little line reading. Have you seen Rosemary's Baby before?
I have once.
Okay, so you'll understand when I say, and I'll be a little vague for people who have not seen it, but even though the veneer of this story is about Satanism and cults and demons, the true horror of this film is conspiracy and the idea that the people around you, Alan, if your wife, if your parents, if your neighbors, if your doctor, what if they didn't actually have your best interests at heart? And what if they were all conspiring to make sure that your best interests aren't followed? That is a real horror, and that is the core of this movie. Not to mention, great performances by Mia Farrow, John Cassavetes, the great independent director of the 70s, Ruth Gordon, who won a Best Supporting Actress award off this. There's a scene in this where you see Ruth Gordon and she's eating a piece of cake, and you're just looking at her, and you're like, of course she won the award. Look how she's eating that piece of cake. That's so good. Like this is a spectacular movie. It's one of the best book to film adaptations of all time. Just a chef's kiss. So a great female protagonist that you root for. She's not a damsel in distress. She fights for herself. Just excellent.
All right, so we've got Rebecca. We've got horror movie Rosemary's Baby. What's next?
Next is A Raisin in the Sun, starring Sidney Poitier from 1961.
Ooh.
This is an adaptation of the play. It is about a struggling black family in Chicago, and their patriarch, the father, he has died recently, unexpectedly, a little younger. He basically worked himself to death. And the family is waiting on a life insurance check for $10,000. Life-changing money. And there's a lot of debate in the household. His now widow, her adult son, and his wife and little boy, and her adult daughter, all of whom live in the same cramped apartment, debates over what to do with the money, whose dream to follow. And there's so much here about this movie that just touches my soul. It is so much commentary on race, on family dynamics, on familial duty, on obligation. Alan, when I tell you that if I put this in, I will cry no less than 3 times. Guaranteed every time. This is just a spectacular story with so much there, so many good quotes, which I won't repeat because they'll just sound random. But it's just an excellent story that I highly recommend. This based on a play, has been adapted multiple times in multiple decades. But the original adaptation, 61, Sidney Poitier, it has my vote for the best. Just spectacular.
We already have a huge array of films just in those 3, so I can't imagine what the next 2 are going to be.
Oh, you'll never guess the next one. This is my 9th favorite movie of all time. This is called Blinded by the Light. This is about a Pakistani teenager in the United Kingdom who becomes inspired by the music of Bruce Springsteen, based on a true story. And there's no reason that this should connect to me. I'm not Pakistani. I'm not British. I don't even listen to Bruce Springsteen. There's nothing on paper that would have me relate to this film. But somehow the way they did it, the way he's inspired by the music, the way that's presented in the film, his family struggles between generations, on his relationship with his dad, just there's so much about this. There's an Enoch Powell reference that I love. There's so much about this that I just love. It's the kind of movie that you just sit in your seat and you grin and you fist bump when it gets to a certain moment. It's really, really good. And if you can't tell by this cover, you should be able to pick this up for about $1 at your local grocery store. That's what I did. I bought this at the local Winn-Dixie, just near the cash register. That's about how this movie was, received. This is a blip that came out I don't even know what year this is, just maybe a decade ago now. But I really enjoyed it. I think if people gave themselves a chance, they'd really enjoy it too. I know it's a very out there choice, but it's really enjoyable. It just makes you smile, man.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm gonna have to trust your word on that one. But sorry. So bring it home. What's number 10?
Bring it home, and this actually connects to our conversation about physical media, because I don't have a physical prop with this one because it doesn't exist. This is a Netflix original that has never gotten a physical release. It's called The Meyerowitz Stories, New and Selected, starring Adam Sandler and Ben Stiller as brothers. Dustin Hoffman is their dad, and it is a family drama where Dustin Hoffman has not been a great parent. He spoiled and gave all his attention to Ben Stiller, ignored Adam Sandler. They even have a sister who got even less attention, and he's getting older, and it's about their family dealing with these processes. This is a film that I think would be relatable to a lot of people. If you've ever had a family member in the hospital and have had to deal with the hospital, you will never relate to a movie more than certain scenes in this, which get it so true to life. And so much about if you have a toxic family member or how difficult it can be with relations between parents and kids. And not to mention little funny asides. It is still an Adam Sandler, Ben Stiller movie, even though it's a serious family drama, but there's definitely some comedy. And it's just so good. It's well written. It's fantastic. This came out about 2017, so we're going on a decade now. I hope someday Netflix does some physical releases. I would definitely pick it up. But yeah, people can just stream that right now if they care to. It's really excellent. And that rounds out my top 10.
All right. Very good. So on that note, before we run out of time, one thing that I want to make sure that we touch on, and this could be a whole other episode unto itself, is since obviously we're both anti-war advocates, it's something that we're incredibly passionate about. You know, war movies obviously are very popular. They're very popular, I'm sure, around the world, definitely in the United States. But there's a certain nuance between what is a war movie and then what is an anti-war movie. And maybe an anti-war movie is like a subgenre of war movies. I don't know. I'm kind of open to that argument. But I thought something that would be interesting for us to discuss here for a few minutes before we wrap up is maybe if we're just specifically looking at the genre of war movies, what in your opinion, and again, I'm just going to challenge you to maybe think of just a few off the top of your head. What are maybe a few of your favorite war movies of all time? And then we're going to get into kind of just, you know, I don't know if debate's the right word, more just the conversation of what's the difference between a war movie and an anti-war movie. So just a few war films that you'd say, oh, these are great war movies.
I'll focus on one in particular because it is one of my favorites. It did not make the top 10 list, but it is an honorable mention under it, and it is both a war movie and, I would argue, an anti-war movie, and that is Hacksaw Ridge, directed by Mel Gibson, starring Andrew Garfield, based on a true story of Desmond Doss, who was a conscientious objector who joined the infantry in World War II, served in the Pacific, saved many men as a medic. And I think it's the kind of thing where movies that, I'm trying to think how to explain this. If you focus in so much on a genre, you'll probably fail. But if you just use the genre as a lens, you'll have better success. It's kind of like saying how in sports movies, the most successful sports movies, the point isn't really the sport, you know? That's just the lens that you're telling the story through. Rocky is great not because it's actually about boxing, you know? It's that kind of thing. And I think Hacksaw Ridge, while it has very shocking displays of violence in its war scenes, which take up about the third act of the film, that is not the point. The actual story is a story of humanity. It is a story about faith. Desmond Doss was a very devout and pious Christian, and the story is about him working through his faith while being in a war setting. And I think it becomes an anti-war movie because of that central messaging. Because it is Desmond Doss, our lead character, our protagonist, saying, when the world is falling apart, I just want to try to put some of it back together. It demonstrates the violence of war, but it does not present it as a good thing. Our protagonist is a man who will not even pick up a rifle. He's essentially a pacifist. But it's not demonstrating that is cowardly or that violence is always the answer, and that at the end of the day, faith matters more than these temporal concerns, these earthly matters. I know there was a lot there that was not exactly presented the most straightforward fashion, but do you kind of get what I'm saying?
Oh, no, yeah, no, I understand completely. I mean, it's so because one of the things that I wanted to emphasize is, you know, if you were to just go on Google and just say, hey, I'm looking for a war movie, you know, find me a war movie, you know, there's going to be Saving Private Ryan, right? Like, that's going to be one that's going to leap to everybody's mind. And I'm not saying it's not a great movie.
I'm saying that I don't like Saving Private Ryan. I'm taking that stand.
Ooh, okay. You know, there's We Were Soldiers, you know, with Mel Gibson, which, you know, some people criticize as it's like it's just the Patriot in Vietnam, but that's, you know, it's a whole other thing. But you know, those are great war like everyone would say, oh, that's a war movie. It's like, okay, but what's the difference then between a war movie and an anti-war movie? And I'm going to throw a few criteria your way, and I want you to respond, because I kind of have a short list of what I would consider to be really good anti-war movies. But before I give you my list, because I've got 4, and we don't have time to discuss them all, but this is my criteria, is for a war movie to be an anti-war movie, it needs to check at least one or more of these boxes. One is it shows the cost of war, and I don't just mean soldiers dying. I mean civilians, you know, cities burning to the ground, you know, families being devastated. You know, the emphasis isn't the action; the emphasis is the aftermath, if that makes sense. I think that is one of the boxes to check. I think another one would be that it's not that it can't have action scenes. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a film, right? You're trying to get butts in the seats, but that's not the emphasis. You know, the emphasis is what's around it. It reminds me of something that the author of A Song of Ice and Fire, George R. R. Martin, who screw you, George, for not finishing the books, and he's never going to.
Seconded.
Yes, but one thing that he gets, that he understands when he's writing his books, is that it's easy for me to write a chapter about a bunch of cool action, but I don't want my book to be about the war. I want the book to be about the people that have to deal with the war, you know. And so that's a big part of it. I think the last thing, so the glorification, you can't glorify the violence. You know, if Arnold Schwarzenegger's pulling up the missile launcher and everyone's doing this, that's glorification. That's an action flick, but it's not an anti-war movie. And the last thing I would say, and again, I'm not saying that every single box has to be checked, but they're important boxes, is that it needs to humanize more than just one side of a conflict. Right? And you're shaking your hand. I know you already know what I'm getting at. Is that if this movie is, you know, look, okay, cool, Nazis are bad. You got me. I'm not a Hitler fan. You know, wow. Now that we've got that on the record, if you're dehumanizing every soldier in Army A and every soldier in Army B as a hero, then what you're telling me is you're pushing a narrative based on the perspective, right? Because I assure you that there are people on Earth that have the opposite perspective of the one that you're pushing. So if you can humanize both sides or multiple sides of a conflict rather than totally dehumanizing one, and you can not glorify the violence, and you can make it about the fallout, not the action. To me, those are the hallmarks of an anti-war movie. So what do you think?
I think those are excellent criteria. I agree with both of them. And I think Saving Private Ryan is definitely at fault for the latter in how it makes German soldiers basically interchangeable, and their deaths particularly bloodless. You know, Saving Private Ryan it has a great opening scene. The D-Day is excellently presented, and after that, it just gets smeared with Spielberg schmaltz. And I love Spielberg schmaltz in other instances, and he's directed some of the greatest films of all time. But I do not think that works in a war movie. And yes, I completely agree with those criteria. And I would add that an anti-war movie has to leave the audience wondering, what was that for? Because a regular war movie, even I would say most war movies, they don't shy away from the brutality of war. They demonstrate the intense violence, the death, sometimes even, as you mentioned, the costs in civilian casualties and the wider perspective. But at the end, they are intended to leave the audience thinking, well, that was bloody, but that was necessary. We had to do it. You know, it was we achieved the good cause. And an anti-war movie will leave the audience wondering, did we have to do that? What was that for? There's an emptier feeling. And I think that's the biggest differential between a war movie and an anti-war movie.
Okay, I agree with that. Okay, so with that kind of that criteria set out, then give me because we're already over time, but I don't care. It's my show, right? I can do whatever I want. Give me 3 if you can. What are 3 movies that you would say this is a great movie? It's a great anti-war movie. Give me 3.
I'm gonna cheat and say Hacksaw Ridge is already one of my 3.
That's fine.
Another one I will say that I think everyone should watch, whether they might end up agreeing with its message or not, is The Americanization of Emily, which is a 1965 film starring James Garner and Julie Andrews. So this is big stars. This is produced by a major studio. It is about James Garner as an American who is sent to Britain during World War II. in the lead up to D-Day. Julie Andrews is like a British, I guess, nurse, but she's helping out. And his task is just to collect resources like women and cigars and chocolate for the officer class. He just rounds things up. And the movie is fascinating because, and there's a lot of great moments in the actual story I'll put to a side, which I think people will enjoy, but the actual message of the film is an embrace or a defense of cowardice in a literal sense, where James Garner makes the argument to the other characters that war is bad and we only get war because we glorify it. That includes glorifying the men who fight the wars and who died in the wars. He actually has a conversation with a woman, I think it's Julie Andrews' mother, whose son was killed in war, and he says it's going to get worse when you say he died doing what was right, he died for a good cause, he had a noble sacrifice. No, he died, and he didn't have to die. And it would have been better if he had avoided the war and just stayed home. It would have been better for everybody. And that is a very stark and radical message to be presented in a standard mainstream film. It's a radical message that I think even as libertarians, we might take a step back away from that a bit and say like, oh, well, I'm not a pacifist, but I think it's a message that's presented in so clear a way, and it's so divorced from any other messaging you're going to get into a Hollywood film, even an anti-war film, that I think it's required viewing for libertarians and anti-war types just to engage with that sort of media, because it's really surprising. And there's a lot of great things about that movie, but just watching it for the message, I think, is absolutely worth it.
Yeah, wow. And talk about a radical message that when it came out, that was only a couple of decades removed from the war.
Yes.
So that's particularly radical. All right, give me a couple more, or give me one more. Give me one more.
Ask me for more.
One more. If you can't think of one, it's okay, because I'll give you
I have
a few.
another. There's a movie that's, I guess, popular among libertarians because I see it recommended a lot when it comes to anti-war films. It's called Shenandoah. It also came out in the mid-'60s, starring Jimmy Stewart. It's a film about the American Civil War, and Jimmy Stewart's position is, oh, I don't want my sons to go fight for either side. What has the government ever done to us? When the government, when my kids were being raised, the government wasn't here with a teat to help feed them, that kind of thing. And I watched it once many years ago. I wasn't very impressed with it as a film, but it does have the message. If people want to check that out, and I say that as a big fan of Westerns, as a big fan of Jimmy Stewart. Not the finest hour for either the actor or the genre, but that's there if people want, that sort of thing.
So I'll give you a few. I think we might have discussed this before the last time you were on. Is of course the all-time classic, All Quiet on the Western Front. And I'm not a snob. If you want to watch the original, that's fine. The one that Netflix did a few years ago is also excellent. I mean, I don't have any faults with it. Are there some subtle changes from the source material? Yes, there are, but they don't destroy the narrative. But importantly, they capture the true essence of the effect of the war on the human psyche. And then yes, when the movie ends, it ends very similarly to the way the original ended, which is when the credits are rolling, you step back and say, well, what the hell was that for then? Which, to your point, there you go. It checks that box in a big way. Another one's really popular is the movie Come and See. Come and See, which came out, I think, in 1985, it's a Russian film that talks about Russian civilians being brutalized by Nazi Germany. And while it is true that they don't exactly humanize the Nazis particularly well, they're absolutely portrayed as just absolute monsters. There's little to no war to it. It's mostly just follows a couple of young people who, I mean, it's trauma porn, to be totally honest with you. It's hard to watch. It's a hard movie to watch. But you know what? That's the damn point, right? It's that there's no glorification. The absolute opposite end of glorification is the movie Come and See. Another one that's a little bit further. I wouldn't say it's further out there, but it's different than what we've been discussing. I don't know if you're an anime or Studio Ghibli fan, but Grave of the Fireflies. Grave of the Fireflies is an all-time GOAT classic film that's universally hailed. So Grave of the Fireflies is about a couple of kids in Japan in the fallout after World War II of their just seeking survival. You know, they don't have adults, they don't have family left, and it is a sad movie. It's an animated film, but it is an incredibly sad movie. And it's an interesting perspective for us, right? Because, I mean, just to call it what it is, we're Americans, and I don't have a high opinion of dropping atom bombs on other countries, but it happened. And from the country that won that war, the perspective is totally just a Japanese civilian perspective of the fallout after the war. And so that makes it brutally honest in a unique perspective. I'll give you one real quick kind of. It's definitely not a diamond in the rough. It's a very famous movie, but it's not a movie that I don't hear people talk about it as much these days, and I'm not 100% sure why you don't hear as much about this movie anymore. But I do consider it an anti-war movie, and this is The Deer Hunter.
Oh, yes, I think that's absolutely an anti-war movie.
I think it's absolutely an anti-war movie, and you know, and it's loaded to the absolute brim with like all-time, you know, famous actors, and you don't see The Deer Hunter anymore. Why is that? Why don't we see The Deer Hunter anymore?
I think that's because of one, it's a dark movie, not just both in content and in vibe. There's no moments of levity. It's just kind of a spiral. Number two, it is a longer film. I think it's broaching on 3 hours, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it is. I'm going to look that up right now.
And I think it is also hurt by the fact that the first, 45 minutes, hour is a wedding. It's a longer wedding opening than The Godfather, and I think that might be hard to suck people into.
3 hours, 3 minutes. Yeah. It's a slog. It is. But I definitely put it on my list of. But if you're a cinephile, you better have seen The Deer Hunter. It's got to be on the list.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And you mentioning anime did get me thinking of at least some Japanese productions. I would say Seven Samurai has an anti-war note at the ending, which is very bittersweet. And after seeing all of this raw violence of, oh, we're doing a good thing, being left with the idea of, well, whose victory was it? Or look at our sacrifice. Or being just left with the costs of the battle and having that be the end note, I think is very impactful. And I will also say, I don't think anti-war is the central message of this, but I think it plays in part. Just the other day, I watched a Japanese-made film called Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. And it stars David Bowie as a British prisoner of war in a Japanese prisoner of war camp. And the Japanese commandant is also played by a Japanese musician. And it's actually a very serious film, a very nuanced film. There's some homosexual undertones, of course. It's an interesting watch, and it does make you sit with of like, man, what are we doing here? Yeah. Well, on that note, we ran out of time 20 minutes ago. So with that always
said,
happens
Hunter,
on my episodes. I talk too much.
I know. Well, and unfortunately, we have one more question that we have to get you out on. But before we do that, where can people go to support you and check out more of your content?
I would say follow me on Twitter, which is just my name, @DeRensis. If you want to get more more of my opinions on film, I have a letterbox where I keep track of what I watch. I usually watch about 200 new movies a year. That's not including rewatches. So find me on Letterboxd, again, just under my name, Hunter DeRensis. My profile picture is David Lynch holding a gun. That's fun. And Yeah, as I said earlier, if you're feeling generous, give to Bring Our Troops Home, give to the Libertarian Institute, give to these organizations so you can actually call yourself a decent person and a libertarian. Because, you know, if you're not actually supporting these causes you say you support, shut the hell up.
Damn. Well, we're going to end on that right there. Hunter, thank you so much for coming back on the show, buddy. We're going to have to do it again, but before next February.
Looking forward to it, Alan. Have a great Valentine's Day.
Guys, we're going to be back to wrap up the show right after this commercial break. Don't go away. If you're enjoying tonight's show, consider supporting the program by becoming a member of our Patreon. That's over at patreon.com/Alan Mosley. Like our Facebook page. It's facebook.com/Alan Mosley TV. You can follow me on Twitter, twitter.com/Alan Mosley TV. Subscribe to our YouTube page. It's youtube.com/Alan Mosley TV. But if you're more of a listener than a watcher, you get us on our favorite podcasting platform of choice. Thanks to Spotify. It's Too Late with Alan Mosley or Alan Mosley TV. Don't forget to get your tickets to the 8th annual It's Too Late live show coming to you Saturday, May 16th at the Riverbend Ranch and Retreat here in beautiful Tennessee. Yeah, I remembered to change the thing there. It's not June 6th. It never was. It never was June 6th. That's the weird thing. It never was.
Close enough.
Yeah. So, Lyle says, if the news is that Alan saved money on his car insurance, I'm going to smash a kitten. Well, it's not. But also, we are going to find some healthier ways for you to express yourself.
Frustration.
Yeah. Dave, do you have a final thought?
I don't know. That was a great interview. I heard about some movies that I have never seen.
A lot of movies.
Yeah. Some of them I might check out. I don't know. You know, I'm not really a Criterion guy, but I like some old cinema.
Yeah. Well, you know, as we discussed, there's that short list of movies that it's like, look, you just watch it so that you can say, I saw that movie. You know, I have an informed opinion of, kind of like The Godfather. You know.
Oh, I got an informed opinion on that.
Yeah. You know what? Don't watch The Deer Hunter. Just don't. Because you're just gonna talk the whole 3 hours.
Wait, what's going on here? I missed that.
Yeah, who are they talking about?
Why's he got that gun?
Guys, thank you so much for watching another episode of It's Too Late, and we will see you next week. Real quick after party, though. Real quick. Yeah, like, just... Yeah. I should have gone to bed 14 minutes ago. It's, yeah, well, since you know that, now what are you gonna do? You know? Yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. Well, at this point, yeah, well, change is scary. Nobody likes change.